Hello there, everybody. Let me just get the chat set up. If you're watching the recording, we will be starting in a minute. Okay, so say hello. Oh, hi, Robert. Say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're from. Click the drop down blue thing so it says everyone. Otherwise, I'm the only person who can see it. Nobody else who's attending can. So make sure you press the drop down little blue thing, and we will get started in a couple of minutes. I know there was a technical glitch yesterday. Not everyone could get into the training. I'm so sorry. You know, because when I do trainings like this, there's usually like, it's about the same kind of numbers. And I'm like, there's not as many people here today. And I thought, well, maybe they're all Brits and everyone's just really sad about the Queen and couldn't make it. And it was a technical glitch, although I'm sure people were sad. But that's what I thought. It's got to be to do with the Queen's funeral. That's why there isn't the normal amount of people here. Good to see so many. Oh, I love seeing all over the world. Probably no Aussies because it's probably, it's too early for the Aussies. But lots of Brits, lots of Americans, Florida, Yorkshire, Finger Lakes area, New York. Make sure you change the drop-down menu to say everyone. Otherwise, I'm the only person who can see your training. Now, who was here yesterday or watched the recording? What were your takeaways? Any breakthrough moments? Any ahas? Anything blow your mind? Any questions? Loved it. Oh, good. Like to see that. Loved it. Loved the recording. Okay, great. I'm going to do like a tiny little recap of yesterday for the people who missed it. Just look where the chat is. Click on the chat. If you look at the bottom, you'll see there's a little chat thing. And then if you go to the chat, there's a little blue box just above it, and you just do the drop down menu. I don't like that Zoom does that. I think it should be set to everyone, but yes, our subconscious mind is responsible for 95% of what happens. Yeah. Yeah. Particularly shocked by our actions being 95% controlled by our subconscious. Yeah, I was shocked too when I learned that. Yeah. Oh, Patricia's saying she was here yesterday, now realize why I have so many day ones. I found the subconscious mind explanation fascinating and felt relieved. And we're going to kind of go even more into that today. So if you're on the mailing list, check your spam, Marina. If you haven't received emails, check your spam or junk. There's a bunch of, I'll post the mindset books that I like. It's all, this is all based on science. It's not something I made up. There's a lot of research into the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, and there's a bunch of books that I recommend. Also, if you haven't got it, a lot of the stuff is in here as well. Soberful and some of these chapters. This is my book, and I reference some of the mindset books that I use. So you could also just get that. Yeah, Toddy, you're doing fine. Toddy, you're perfect. You typed a message and everyone can see it. So just to recap yesterday, what we were talking about is that the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. The conscious mind is what you're aware of. So it's your thoughts and it's your rational brain. Your subconscious mind is what you're unaware of. Your subconscious mind is responsible for 95% of what happens in your day. Your conscious mind is responsible for 5% of what happens in your day. So our subconscious mind is just programming. And because when we're taking in data all the time, trying to make sense of the world, trying to create meaning, oh, that means that, that's like that, so we can function. Best example of this is learning to drive a car. when we, I think pretty much everyone's learned to drive a car or even ride a bike. We do it very consciously. My kids are pretty good bike riders, but there's still things that they're learning. So when we learn to ride a car, drive a car, we're doing it very consciously, right? When I go back to England, drive on the other side of the road, I'm doing it very consciously. Where, like, what side of the road, where's the signal, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually and that takes effort. And it would be too exhausting if we did so many things in our lives consciously. So our brains take that programming of how to drive a car and put it into our subconscious mind, so we do it automatically. So, for example, when I was living in a street in New York and they were doing roadworks, and there was these signs for weeks like doing roadworks, road won't be open, blah, blah, blah. 90% of the time, I would pick my kids up from school, go down the road and go, oh God, there's roadworks, and turn around and have to go the other way. The reason I just kept doing it, despite my rational mind, my conscious mind had seen the signs and said, oh, there's roadworks, right, there's roadworks. But my subconscious mind drove us home. We know the route from school, we just did it. So it's the same with our lives, with our feelings, with our responses to things. Your response to the world, to people, to what they say, to circumstances that happen to you, is all based on programming that came from when you were much younger. And that's the most important thing to take away from yesterday, is to know that getting sober, and I don't just talk about getting sober, I talk about changing your life. It's not just getting sober, it's achieving your goals, it's your career, it's how you feel about yourself, it's your relationships, for sure. It's not about changing your circumstances. It's not about willpower. It's about your programming. So change your programming and the results you get in life will change. And this has been proven to be true in many different ways. And that's a lot of what we're covering this week. And we're going to go into a lot more detail about what that is and how to do it. Makes sense so far to everybody? And if you missed yesterday, you can watch the recording, Bluetooth it through your car. You don't have to watch me. So I'm just reading the comments. So people are asking me, well, how do I change my subconscious mind? We're getting to that. Today, we're going to talk about that and how to change your story. I'm going to give you the how. Wednesday, we're going to talk about fixed and growth mindset. Thursday, we're going to talk about limiting beliefs. Don't miss Thursday. Don't miss any of the days. I'm going to give you all of the answers and how to do that. I'm giving away everything. Check your spam if you didn't get the replay. I'll try and post the replay page in the chat if I can. So I'll give you a lot of the answers. Okay, so let's dive into the material. You are stuck in your story. So at the end of today's training, I'm going to give you a homework question. Post your homework answer in the Soberful Facebook group in the post. I'll pin it to the top of the page so you can see it. Post it in the comment where it says day 2 homework, because then you'll be eligible to win prizes. And I'm going to give away a free place to my 5-month sober mindset program, which starts in a couple of weeks. Okay, so we're going to learn today about effort, failure, the stories that keep you stuck, and particularly our story about drinking and alcohol being fun. So we're going to learn how the stories we tell ourselves are very powerful and how they keep us stuck. And the stories we tell ourselves are part of this subconscious mind programming. That's how we run the program, is we just tell ourselves the story. Good news. For our lives to improve and our circumstances to get better, it's not the outside world that needs to change. It's our story that has to change. I'm not in control of a lot of my circumstances and environment. I'm just not. But I am in control of how I respond to my circumstances, which is the story I tell. So one of the big things, and one of the reasons that you're here, is that alcohol is the best way to have fun. Who believes that or has believed that in the past? So this is one of the most powerful stories, and it is powerfully communicated to us through our media, through marketing, through our peer group, through our culture. That story of alcohol being fun and sexy and exciting and the way to be included and part of and to belong, that story is told on many levels in our culture, right? I was given that story when I was a teenager. That's what the young adults around me said and showed me. That's what my culture showed me. And I believed them and I never questioned it. I took that story was given to me and I just took it and didn't question it. Did you all do the same thing? I started drinking about 13 years old. And when I was 15, I could get into bars and clubs in England because you just had to look old enough back in the 80s. And I remember one night being in a pub and I was really drunk and I could feel myself going into blackout. And I woke up outside the pub, literally in the gutter. My head was on the drain, covered in my own vomit, with the landlord throwing a bucket of water over me. And I had this moment of thinking, this is not right. This isn't good. This isn't good. The next day, all of my peer group told me how much fun I had had and that I was like really crazy and wild. And being really that crazy and wild with alcohol was the most fun. And I kind of went, okay, And my brain took that data, put it in the filing cabinet in my brain and went, fun equals that. And then I just kept reinforcing it and reinforcing it. And we've all probably done similar things. I've had so many clients who've told me they don't want to quit drinking because they're afraid of missing out. Who's afraid of missing out? That's the most common one. And nobody shows up in front of me by accident. Nobody comes to me because their drinking is like so much fun. And I do an assessment with them and I'm like, there is nothing here that looks enjoyable. Nothing. But they're in this delusion. It's a delusion of this story. We just keep repeating it and we keep looking, we keep reinforcing it with each other, right? We keep telling each other these stories. Oh my God, I'm so hungover, but it was worth it. Don't know about, sorry, none of my hangovers were worth it. They just weren't. I mean, I had really bad anxiety. It was horrible. It wasn't worth it. But I kept telling myself it was. Kept telling that story, as did other people. I remember I had a client back in the day in Bury St Edmunds, and when he came to us, he was an executive at an advertising agency, I think in London, had a really nice house, really nice wife, 2 kids. And his drinking and cocaine use was a real problem. And he still had everything on the table. Like his wife really wanted him to get him help. He, maybe probably not do the cocaine and cut down a little bit, but he believed his drinking was really fun. It was really clear that it wasn't, but he was committed to that story. And over 2 years, everything began to go. The job is usually the last thing to go, I will tell you, because the job is where the money is and the money is where the alcohol is. So the wife and kids went first and the house. And then eventually the job did go, and eventually ended up homeless. And he was in a homeless shelter in Bury. And he would come every so often and try and get sober, but he was still convinced that he could manage his drinking so he could get all the fun. And I remember him telling me this story that the homeless shelter used to get food from Marks and Spencer's is like a very posh grocery store in the UK. And there, whatever wasn't sold or at the end of the day, instead of throwing it out, they would take it to the homeless shelter, which a lot of places do. And he was like, we had lobster last night. I'm like, you're in a homeless shelter eating out of date lobster. But he couldn't see it. That was the story. We get very committed to this story, very, very committed, that drinking is fun. And what happens is we just think, well, next time it will be all right. Next time it will be really, really fun. The next time. And we can do that for years. Who has done that for years? Just looking at the comments. You know, I hear that a lot, Michelle. I'm afraid I will be considered boring. You know what? We cannot live our lives because of what other people may or may not think about us. That is a tragedy. You know what? Maybe they will, Michelle. Lots of people might think you're boring. So what? Who sleeps in your head tonight? You or them? Yeah. And we're so scared of changing the story because we think, well, if alcohol's fun, therefore sober must equal boring. And who wants that? So we just keep trying to manage it. So let's look at how we can get free of a limiting story by changing the language that we use, by changing the story we have about ourselves. And how amazingly, when we do that, it also changes how we feel about things and then what is possible for us. One of the best examples of this is changing our language around failure and effort, as these two things and the meaning we've attached to them is key to our success. And we get stuck in failure stories. This won't work out for me because I won't be able to do it. I haven't got time. It's too late. I'm too old. Those are very common ones. It's too late. I'm too old. Very common stories. You know, I got an email from one of my clients. I think she's about 72. Oh, you're here, Toddy. You're here, aren't you? I was just going to tell a little bit about how wonderfully you're doing and how you never gave up on yourself. And I have several ladies in their 70s who are not telling themselves that story because they're living right now in the present. So this is something I see in the Soberful Facebook group a lot, over and over. I failed. I'm such a failure. Those words don't feel good, do they? If you're saying that about that story, if I'm such a failure, I'm such a fuck up, it just doesn't feel good. And when we don't feel good, we look for ways to change how we feel. See how that works? This is a story that keeps us stuck. So failure can be a painful experience, but that pain is a gift. It doesn't define who you are. Failing at something doesn't mean you're a failure. And I don't even like to use those words. I like messed up, didn't land right, didn't get it quite right. Those words feel much better than failure. Failure just doesn't feel nice. I change the words. It just feels different. It feels better. And we're not denying reality. That's not what we're doing here. This isn't toxic positivity. If we change the words, we actually get more into what is truthful. So this is in your workbooks. Those of you who've got printed that off, or you can write it down. Make notes. You're going to want to make notes. There is no such thing as failure, only feedback. There is no such thing as failure, only feedback. We just get feedback all the time that we can learn and grow from. Think of all the things you have failed at to get where you are. My whole career is built on failure. Like, I ended up doing this because I'd failed so spectacularly at so many other things. When I got sober at 27, I felt like I'd failed at everything. I was nowhere near where my peer group was. I didn't have all of the things, the houses, the babies, the partners, any of that kind of stuff. I felt like a failure because I felt like I'd made such a mess of my life. Now, this is really important. Who's felt like that? Who's felt just like a failure, like just compared to everybody else? This is how we change our language and reframe that. When we get sober, I can transform my past into wisdom. I learned a lot from my mistakes, and I have a lot of wisdom because of that. I've had a lot of experiences that other people haven't had. Because my life was such a mess, I had to put some effort into changing. I had to learn stuff like the stuff I'm teaching you. I had no idea about this stuff. I had to learn it and practice it and mess around with it and do it and see that things changed. That was a gift. If I had never had an alcohol or drug problem, I may never have discovered this work because I never would have had the urgency to do so. All of you are carrying things that can be transformed into wisdom. Doesn't that feel better? Who likes how that feels? Changing the story about your past is crucial to a sober mindset. Doesn't that just feel a lot better? I'm just going to look at some of the comments. Oh, Diane. Hi, Diane. Lovely to hear that. Stopped drinking in June. I've had moments where I've laughed harder than I have in years. Not drinking has lifted the depressed mood I've been in for so many years. Because guess what? Alcohol's a central nervous system depressant. So that's what it's going to do. So it's not failure that's the problem. It's the mindset around it. And what the mindset we have around it is relapse equals failure. It doesn't. Don't tell that story. In fact, we don't allow that language in any of my programs in Soberful Life. We don't look at relapse as failure. We look at it as feedback, because we believe that you get sober by putting weight on the sober end. And that's been my experience of 22 years of sobriety and 20 odd years as a therapist. So drinking is a seesaw. This is alcohol and this is sobriety. And you get sober by putting weight on the sober end, consistently putting weight on the sober end. And what is weight? It is doing something like this. It is joining community. It is reading books, listening to podcasts. It's working a program, dealing with resentments, limiting beliefs, practicing gratitude, forming a sober community. All of those things are weight on the sober end. And eventually gravity will take over and it will embed itself in the earth. And alcohol just flies off away. That's how we view sobriety in my programs. That we're just going to keep putting weight. There's no such thing as failure. We look at people being in long-term recovery and putting weight on the sober end rather than keep going back to day one again. If you haven't drunk 18 days out of 30 this month, great. Next month, you don't drink 25 days out of 30, fantastic. Eventually, that weight will pay off. So everything you have done has had value and has got you to this point. When we put weight on the sober end, we are open to learning from our experiences. What did I learn? What can I do differently? When we just tell ourselves the story that we're failures, there's nowhere to go with that. Where do you go with that? Apart from, it's a dead end. There's no growth. No wonder we want to drink. We drink because we feel bad about ourselves, and we create stories to justify it to ourselves. And we all get stuck in stories. Now, we can see this in the people around us, and this isn't to judge other people. It's just so you can see what I can demonstrate the theory that I'm teaching you. We all know people, right, who just have a story that they just say over and over. Like I used to have a friend, she was deep down very unhappy, and she wasn't dealing with the reasons that she was very unhappy. She was always doing new things. She'd sign up for this course. I'm going to do this course. I'm going to do this training. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to be a beautician. It's going to be great. And what would typically happen is she would burn herself out, burn some bridges, get pissed off with everything and everybody and just leave and not finish it. And it was the course that was wrong, and the teacher was wrong, and this person was wrong, and the days were wrong, and it was all wrong. And then she'd be down in the dumps, and then it would be a new thing. Oh, I'm working at this place now. Oh, it's incredible, everyone. And it was the same thing over and over. Who knows someone like that in their life? Who has had that experience where they can just see that pattern? Oh, thank you, Carolyn. Who can see that pattern in other people? Just the same story. So we do the same thing. So don't think that you don't do it, because we do. We all have the same stories. We talk ourselves out of things a lot. We're like, oh, I want to do, this is the reason I can't. Oh, I want to do, oh, this is the reason I can't. So we think our story is true. It's not anything to do with me. It was the people, it was the thing, it was that, it was this. And we're just telling ourselves a story to keep us stuck. Today is your invitation to tell a different story. So when we change our story, which is changing our mindset, we change our outcomes and we change how we feel. This is how we move to emotional mastery. It's never about denying reality or toxic positivity. Like toxic positivity is that just like, everything's fine. It's all just, I'm so grateful. Everything is just wonderful. You know, it doesn't work. We want to live in truth. We want to live in reality. And we can do that by shifting our perception so our reality feels more doable and more comfortable. The stories we tell ourselves are the ones that are dishonest. So let's change how we view failure, because guess what? You're going to fail all the time. And I think culturally, we actually have a phobia around failure. We are actually terrified of making mistakes, and this fuels our anxiety. And I feel I see that in parenting a lot. Like we make our kids so not failing and not messing up. So I think we have this fear of failure, and yet we fail all the time. It's part of life. I mean, if you ever seen like a baby learn to walk, all it does is fail all the time. Like falls over, falls down, they're just kind of messing up all the time. And eventually they figure it out, right? We don't look at them and go, maybe they're not a walker, right? That's how we learn and change and do anything. So I think we have a fear of failure, because we have lots of beliefs around vulnerability, and there's something about this feedback that we get that is vulnerable. The problem isn't failure. The problem is how we perceive it. It's the meaning we give failure. And I want to tell you, sobriety, that what it boils down to, all it is a shift in perception. Like the world has not changed. My mother has not changed. People have not changed. The drink industry has not changed. How I perceive everything has absolutely transformed. That's all that's changed. So we want to do this work to eventually have a shift in perception where we see everything differently. Just going to look at some of these comments. You know, our stories show up a lot in our relationship patterns, particularly romantic relationships. My romantic relationships were a train wreck, and I had the same pattern. Same thing happened over and over. Meet someone, they think I'm amazing, and then they would leave me. I would create abandonment. I was recreating the story from my childhood when my father left. And I kept thinking, if I was better or different, if I could just find the one, then I'd be happy. It wasn't about finding the one, it was about becoming the one. But what happens is, with our story, which is limiting beliefs, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We just keep getting our story. If our story is, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of being loved, we just keep getting more of that. Make sense? Just going to have a quick look at your comments. Robert's saying, what if one drinks to chase away fears? What we want to do is get to the story that's underneath the fear. So we want this shift in perception because there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. That is a shift in perception. So for example, if you are back to day one again, we're not going to tell ourselves a story, I've failed and back to day one again. And this is what I see a lot. I'm not strong. I need to try harder, which is all about believing that willpower is what's going to work. Willpower doesn't work in being sober, or really with much. What we can do is change that story, reframe it to, I drank again, and this is what I've learned. When I have a tough day, it really helps when I reach out to someone. I've drank again, and this is what I've learned. When I'm still in my early days, I'm not going to put myself in vulnerable situations where there's lots of temptation. That's feedback. It's not denying truth. It's not just denying reality. But can you see the difference with these two stories? How when we tell a story that's more truthful, how it feels so different, and much more things feel possible. There's enormous feedback. If you keep going back to day one, you have a lot of really good feedback, that if you take it, will help you put weight on the sober end. Am I making sense to everybody? Thomas, I'm coming to it. I've got 5 days of this. Telling a different story will shift our perception. Perception is everything. You're going to hear me, if you do a program with me, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. But it's all about perception. We perceive things a certain way. So that's the FOMO, right? I got sober at 27 and I didn't want to stop drinking because I absolutely was committed to the belief system that alcohol was the best way to have fun, excitement, belonging, connection. And I wanted those things more than anything. Like my whole backstory, I was very isolated, very lonely. Belonging and being part of was huge for me, and fun, right? I'm in my 20s. And when I finally saw there was a massive link between my alcohol and drug use and my mental health problems, I reluctantly came to the opinion that I had to stop, because I wasn't happy about it, but I accepted that that's what I had to do if the trade-off was my panic attacks and anxiety would go. And I just thought, well, sober equals boring, so I'm just going to be really boring for the rest of my life. I'm never going to go out, I'm never going to go dancing, and that's going to be how it is. But at least I won't be anxious and have panic attacks, and I'll just, plod through life. That's what I believed. And I would see all of my peers going out and have like crazy nights out and be like, it's not fair, I'm in a church hall on a Saturday night. And that's the story I was telling myself. But I consistently and very imperfectly just kept doing stuff that put weight on the sober end. And I remember I was still in my 20s, maybe 29, a couple of years. I was socializing, going out to nightclubs. And I remember going to festivals, love going to music festivals in England. I remember going to see a concert, I think it was U2, and I had lots of Aussie friends and Kiwi friends, and they would go to everything because not many bands travel to New Zealand. And I remember we went to see them in London, and they were so excited. They bought tickets a year in advance. Oh, it was such a big thing. And we got there and they kept missing things. And they were in the bar or the toilet and then the bar. And they missed all the best songs or just get the last minute. Whereas I'm there just dancing, having a great time. And I had this, that's when my perception really, really clicked. I thought, I'm having more fun than you are. And I went from FOMO to JOMO. I mean, I just would look at my peer group who would be drunkenly saying, oh my God, I can't believe you don't drink. Oh, I'm having so much fun. I'd be like, yeah. All that happened was a shift in perception. I was going out, I was doing all the things, I was having a great time, but I just no longer perceived that alcohol would make that situation better. My perception shifted. that alcohol would make this situation worse and less enjoyable. I'm just going to look at some of my comments here. Jomo is the joy of missing out. Oh, the joy of missing. Oh my God. Going to a nightclub, and by midnight I was done. I could dance, flirted with some boys. I could see people were on cocaine at that point. And I was like, no, thank you. I've had a good time. I'm going home. I spent $20. I'm going to get out for a run at 7 a.m. the next day. I am so glad to be missing out on all of that, being up till 5 a.m. snorting powder and drinking with people I've just met. Ugh. But my perception was 3 or 4 years earlier, that was the best night ever. All that's changed is our perception. So what I want to help you change your mindset about is about effort. So this is one of the number one things I see posted a lot, is about getting sober is hard. Who believes that getting sober is hard? Like getting sober is hard. It's not true. It's not hard. It isn't. Having an alcohol problem is hard. Who's been to work on a hangover and no sleep with anxiety? That's hard. Who's had to do some really important stuff that has to be done and they're hungover and they don't have their shit together? That's hard. I remember when I drank a lot because I had really bad anxiety and panic attacks, and I was doing my degree in London. So I was about 23, and I couldn't sit in lectures because I'd have a panic attack. And it was like big lectures, about 100 people. And if my lectures were in the afternoon, that was okay, because I could go to the student union bar, and I needed about 1.5 pints of beer, because that's what I drank then, because it was cheap, to be fine in the lecture, like just enough for the fear to go, but not drunk seeming. And this was the 90s, everyone drank at lunchtime, it was fine. But what if the lecture was at 9 a.m? That was my dilemma. And one day I thought, well, I'm going to have a drink. That's just what I'm going to have to do. So like every person with an alcohol problem, I got vodka for the secret drinking, because we believe vodka doesn't smell. And I put it in my Diet Coke bottle, and I went into the toilets at about 8:15, trying to time it. I just needed to drink enough to get, everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? That just get to that point where you can manage. And I remember knocking it back and being like, I had to go to the off license, I had to get this, I was in the I had to get there early to get in the toilets, I had to hide it. And it was disgusting. I didn't want to drink it at that time in the morning. I remember thinking, this is what alcoholics do. And I thought, no, alcoholics enjoy it. I'm not enjoying it. I'm doing it because I have to. So I drank, and then I would go to the lecture, and sometimes I got like, I was a bit too buzzed, and my friends were like, are you, like, it's 9:30, are you drunk? Like, I remember someone sticking the vodka in my bag. That's hard work, people. That's hard work. Sobriety requires effort. That's the mindset shift. Do not tell yourself the story that getting sober is hard. It's not. Your drink problem was freaking hard work, really hard work. Sobriety is going to require effort. And notice how those things feel. Work, I don't even like the word work. It just feels like, right? I don't want to feel like that. I want to do something joyously. Sobriety requires effort, and it requires consistent effort. Consistency is the magic ingredient to getting sober. Consistency. Consistently putting weight on the sober end. Does that make sense? So there's nothing, getting sober, staying sober is not hard. Do not tell that story. That's a story you're telling yourself, and there's nowhere to go with it. It just feels like that, right? Tell yourself, change the story to get sober, I need to put effort in. It will feel different. It feels more open. It feels more doable. It feels if you tell yourself the story, getting sober is hard, that doesn't feel doable. It doesn't. Getting sober requires effort, feels doable. Getting sober has been the most difficult thing I've ever done. And it's what I've had to put the most effort into. I had to put a lot of effort into getting and staying sober, more than anything else I've ever done in my life, I think. Just looking at some of your comments. Jane is saying, I hate the anxiety that drink caused me. We've all been there, right? It's the worst thing in the world. Like, I'm sorry, no night out I had was worth it. Just wasn't. But that's the story people kept telling me. It's awful. The paranoia, the just, oh. All my relapses this year have been given me positive feedback I need. Being sober is worth the effort and it's a joy to be present. Yeah. Sophie's saying, wow, I get that now. Thank you. You're right. Drinking is so bloody hard, and not drinking actually is not hard, just feels so uncomfortable. Diane saying, spending the weekend with 2 drinkers made me very aware of all of the effort they put into planning to drink, getting the alcohol, making sure there's enough, drinking, thinking about where to go for the next drink. It was exhausting to observe. Absolutely. That's the bandwidth, by the way. That all of that is like takes up a lot of energy and thought space for what, really? For our perception that it's relaxing and enjoyable when actually it's really not. How much time, money, and energy have you put into your relationship with alcohol? And what did you get back? Was the investment worth the results? This is how we put weight on the sober end, is the cost benefit analysis. Like, are you getting a good return on your investment? Was it cost you in time, money, energy? We believe things are hard. We believe that people who got sober or achieved things were lucky, had it easy. And I know people do that to me. People project that onto me, that I'm different, I'm lucky. I'm not like, when I got sober on my own, like I didn't have any family around me or any friends. I went to 12-step programs because that's all there was 22 years ago. And I just kept showing up and listening and reading and asking people for help. So please don't think that I am different from you, because I'm not. Don't tell yourself that story. The reason anyone gets or does anything is consistent, imperfect effort. I am the result of the effort I put into myself. We are the result of the effort that we put in. And often what we're doing is we're just putting effort in the wrong place. That, like Diane said, drinking takes a lot of effort for what at the end of it? What do you get at the end of it? Sobriety takes a lot of effort, but I get some stuff at the end of it. I get some good stuff, and I like good stuff. I'm quite addicted to good stuff. I just want more of it. More good stuff, please. And so I just put a bit more effort in. Ooh, more good stuff. Fantastic. I did not show up like this. None of this was luck. I changed inch by inch. What you see here is the result of 2 decades of consistent effort. I couldn't stop drinking. I could not have healthy romantic relationships. I couldn't speak in public. I believed I had nothing to offer. I did this messily and very imperfectly. I'm also pretty lazy, but I just kept doing it. Consistency is the key here. And when you have the right tools, support, and strategy that works, you will be able to do it too. And that's why we need expert help. If you knew how to be sober and happy and free, you would have done it already. So here's the thing, write this down. It's in your workbooks. Sobriety is not some people get it and some people don't. It's that some people do it and some people don't. This is not, it's not like you have to, have a certain IQ or whatever. It's not, you don't get it. Sobriety is not something you get. It's just some people do it. They just keep putting weight on the sober end. Effort in the right places can transform your experience. We just keep doing the stuff that works no matter what. And what happens is in sobriety, we have this burst of intense effort and we change a bit and then we stop doing everything that works and slide back. Who's done that? And the reason we do that is because we're still in a fixed mindset and using willpower. Intensity over consistency doesn't work. Because it seems like we're putting effort in and trying, but what we're actually doing is setting ourselves up to fail, so we can reinforce our story of I'm a failure, it won't work for me, and we can stay stuck. Our subconscious mind is very clever at running programs. If your program is Veronica's a failure, Veronica always messes up, things don't work out for Veronica, Veronica's not worthy of being loved. If that's my programming in my subconscious mind, and I am just using intensity, just like, I'm just going to push through, just keep going, and then I eventually burn out, that story is going to win. I have to change the story, and we change it by changing the language. Sobriety is hard, is just a story that we're getting out into the open, and we're changing the language. You'll find yourself sliding back into it, like, oh God, this is so hard. What did that girl say on that video? She says it's not hard. Sobriety takes effort. And that's how we begin to change the programming in our subconscious mind. The sober mindset is a proven system. It's based on science and research. If what you're doing is not working, then get outside expert help. Join a community, as when we try to change without feedback and support, we're at the mercy of what the ego tells us, which is that voice in our heads. And we can't always trust it because it's just reiterating our limiting beliefs to us, our story to us. Very important to apply effort in the correct place with support and the right information. And it's hard to do this on our own because we just end up, again, we think we're putting effort in, but we're just stuck in our story, spinning our wheels. Catherine saying, I'm always too intense about everything. Yeah, guess what? You don't have to be intense at all. You only have to do little bits of consistent effort. Just reading some of your comments. Nike, just do it. Love it. Consistent, imperfect consistency. Oh, Michelle, I've never felt as though I have ever belonged, but within this group, I truly feel at home. Me too. The first time I really, really felt like I belonged was with a group of people struggling with alcohol problems, because I didn't have to hide. And I related to not what necessarily what people did, but how they felt. And that was the first time I felt like I wasn't alone. So sobriety, this is in your workbooks, write it down. Sobriety takes imperfect, consistent effort. And that's a much better story than sobriety is hard, because it's doable, right? Effort is doable. I don't care how old you are, what your circumstances are, what your story is, what your history is, who you live with. It doesn't matter. You can, from whatever position you're in, put some effort in today and tomorrow and the next day. And that's doable. Telling yourself the story that sobriety is hard, it's not doable. We can't do anything about that. When we change our story, all sorts of things become possible for us, not just in sobriety, but in all areas of our life. You know, having your career, your relationships will all become transformed when you change your story. So today, I want you to practice reframing the idea of effort and failure. I want you to just take everything that I've taught you. Again, it's in the workbook, the work check. If you don't have it, it's in your junk folder. And I think Carolyn put a link to this. It's back in the chat somewhere. Reframe what you think you believe about effort and failure, and also question the story you tell yourself about drinking and sobriety. Thank you, Carolyn. There's the workbook. Grab it there. Just click on it and it'll open up somewhere and you can download it later. What is the story that you have been telling yourself about drinking and fun and sobriety? Is it true? What evidence do you have? Just question it. What is the feedback telling you? What is what the feedback that you're getting? What's it telling you? Have a look at that. So I'm going to give you a homework question in just a second. Any quick questions from today? How has that helped? Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about when you change your mindset, your life will change. I'm going to be talking about moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And also, Jen is going to be joining me and telling you her story about how she changed her mindset with the Sober Mindset program. Do not miss that. I will be talking about the ego, I think on Thursday. Winifred is saying, it's amazing how deeply I feel my story is true. I'm not sure who I would be without it. Sometimes that's the reason we hold on to our story, because and we talk about this on Thursday, our story keeps us in this place here. If we change our story, we're actually going to go to this new place, the land of sobriety, for example. It's a new place, not been there before, don't know what this looks like, don't know how that works. And that can feel quite scary. Oh, I don't want to do that. So we just kind of keep telling ourselves a story about why we are here. It's very, very, very powerful stuff. This is not just about drinking. It's about lots of different, it's about transformation on every area of our life. I find that sober requires everyday effort. Is this true? So this is my experience. I'm 22 and a half years sober. I don't think about drinking or not drinking. Alcohol just doesn't exist for me. I mean, once in a while I sort of notice it in passing, but it doesn't exist for me. I put effort into personal development because I saw if you keep putting weight on the sober end, and that takes effort, something will happen. Eventually, I made this link that when I do this stuff, I feel better and my life just goes better. And I like that. Ooh. So if I keep doing this stuff, I'll get more of that. And once that link was made, the personal development stuff that I have done for over 20 years that I teach in all of my programs, it just felt fairly easy to do. It was just it's like I brush my teeth and have a shower, and I do my personal development stuff. I write out my resentments and my fears and my limiting beliefs and my gratitude, and I talk to someone every so often. And that just means I like how I feel comfortable in my own skin, and my life goes better. That's how it works. Quick story. So I have a bad back, and for ages my chiropractor has been telling me that I really need to do these exercises and stretches, and I've been kind of like, yeah, like, oh, do a couple of stretches and whatever. Well, a few months ago it was really bad, and I got serious about putting the effort into doing these regular stretches and exercises. And very quickly I saw a relationship between how flexible I was, how stiff my back was, and how I felt. I do this stuff and I like how my back feels, and now it's just become automatic. That's how it works. We put the effort in until that click happens where we go, ooh, when I consistently do this, I like how I feel. I'll do more of this because I just want to keep feeling this way. That's how it works. Does that make sense? So I continue to put effort into myself because I'm worth it. I'm worth it. I'm still growing and developing as a person. I self-reflect. I sometimes have to deal with the resentment or fear or that kind of stuff that pops up. And when I do that stuff, I just feel so much better. And I just want more of that, please. More of that, more good stuff. I'm going to talk a little bit about resentments. I teach that in my programs. It's quite in-depth work, but I'm going to tell you resentment work is a key pillar to long-term sobriety, key pillar to sobriety. And I'm going to say the resentment work is probably the most profound thing I've ever done. Okay. Nancy saying my daughter's a chiropractor. Love my chiropractor. Yeah. And I understand the difference between effort and failure in my conscious mind, but my subconscious mind takes over. So every time you notice yourself telling yourself that story, what I've done is brought it to your awareness. So when you notice that you're telling yourself that story, you're going to go, oh, I'm doing it again. What did she say? And you're going to just tell yourself a different story. And over time, it will begin to shift. Okay. I will be back tomorrow. We're going to be talking about when you change your mindset, your life will change, moving from a fixed to growth mindset. Jen will be with us. You're going to want to hear her story. Thursday is limiting beliefs. Do not miss Thursday. Do not miss Thursday. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Oh, your homework, sorry. Homework is, what story am I stuck in? Go to the Soberful Facebook group. You'll see a post. I'll pin it to the top of the group so you can see it. Day 2, post your answer and you'll be eligible to win some prizes at the end of the week. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.